Good morning, everybody. I am sharing, so I can't see if people are dropping in and faces and names and stuff. I'll give it a couple of minutes for everybody else to join, and thank you so much for coming along this morning. Really looking forward. I think just showing you into obviously systems you've got in place at the moment. Really talking about how we can confidently help you reduce emissions, manage EVs, and some quick tips and takeaways that I think are really gonna support in that. So we'll go into stuff in about 30 seconds. Just going to give it a little bit of time for others to join it as well. Apologies. Cool. So I think we'll crack into things, and I know there's some joining a little bit later on, some who will be watching recordings back. So just to confirm, this session will be recorded. There will be a transcript, and afterwards we will share collateral, slides, and everything that we run through today. But firstly, thanks so much for taking the time out. Obviously, as customers of Smartrak using various facets of our system, some with pool car, key management, some with telematics, but I hope you can all take away something that's going to be of value today. Really what we're going to do is, there's a rough agenda which we'll run through shortly, but it's going to be spending a lot of time in the system looking into reporting, features, ways in which efficiency can be improved, and also some tips and tricks based on things that we've recently developed that are going to really help you confidently manage EVs as you bring them into the fleet. It's very much a flavour of the last 12 to 18 months. Everybody's facing the same, I suppose, challenges, excitements, and being able to confidently do this, but also that wider picture of how we reduce emissions and the other ways we can do that as the means to an end, not just introducing EVs as well. So for those who haven't met myself before, so I am Rob. I'm based in our Melbourne office, but I'm part of our sales and account management team. So I work closely with your various customer success managers or points of contacts within Smartrak. I've been here for about coming up for about 18 months now, really getting stuck into the system, and it's great to be working with so many of you on a one-to-one basis, but also as a wider group to make sure you're getting the most out of your investment within Smartrak, and the system's really providing the value that it's expected to. And I've got my colleague Charlene on with me today, who I'll allow her to do a quick introduction before we head into things.
Just quickly before I introduce myself, are you able to hear now, Tristan? I see you dropped a question in there that you're struggling to hear. Is everyone else hearing us? Could I just get a confirmation?
All good for
Perfect.
myself.
Great, thanks guys. Tristan, if you're still having trouble, you might need to drop off and rejoin. Apologies. So as Rob said, I'm Charlene Peterson. I run the EV enablement side of Smartrak's business. I've met quite a few of our customers over the last 3.5 years I've been at Smartrak, and we identified this need of helping our fleet managers and our customer organisations introduce EVs in their fleet as one of a range of ways that we help customers to reduce emissions overall. So the new products that Rob is going to show you, we co-developed with a special interest group just to make sure that it would work for a range of our customers in a number of different scenarios, both here in New Zealand, where I'm based, and in Australia. So we're looking forward to getting your feedback on those today as well, and excited to show you what we've been working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll hash into things by way of how I like to present things. It's not a case if you have to wait. There is a Q&A at the end, but if there's any questions at all, pop them into the chat. There is a Q&A part within there as well. If there's anything you want me to go into in a bit further detail, please do shout out, put your hand up, but also more than welcome just to sit back, listen in, and hopefully pick some bits and pieces up on the way. Just note that I can't see the chat in real time, so Jamie, Charlene, and the wider Smartrak team on here will be able to support as well. So absolutely, this is going to be delving into managing EVs within your system and also being able to reduce emissions as well. So I'm just going to move through to the next page. So in terms of our agenda, what we're going to discuss today is those of you who may just have the pool car system at the moment, how we can maximize the use of EVs within that, and how we can look at certain areas of reporting, registers, data to actually help us confidently manage them, but also introduce them into the fleet. Preparing for that EV adoption with the right data and reporting, it's become apparent from conversations with customers that we really want to ensure they are maximizing the full system itself. Whilst Poolcar by name, by nature, is very much a self-serve, intuitive shared vehicle booking system, it can be so much more than that. When the right information is fed into the system, it can give you a lot more operational efficiency improvements. We're also going to look at how we can optimize this from a vehicle leasing perspective and future procurement decisions. So from understanding and speaking with customers, while you may have leased model or owned model, some have a variation and a mix of both. It's important to be able to consider all aspects and how we can keep costs low whilst obviously meeting targets from an emissions perspective, but also not hindering operational use of vehicles itself. Also, the benefits of integrated telematics. There's some who do have Smartrak telematics in the call today, so it'll be interesting to hear the differing ways in which the system's used, and also how we can reduce emissions through other ways. As I mentioned, electric vehicles are going to be an important part of the emissions reduction process, but it's certainly a means to an end. There's other ways in which this can be done through driver habits, behaviour, rationalising fleet numbers, and ensuring we've got the right amount of supply and demand when it comes to our fleet. So I'll be jumping back and forth through to the agenda and different points, but as mentioned, a lot of this time is going to be spent within our system. So any questions as we go, please shout out. So the first part here, we're going to be looking at how we can maximise the utilisation, ensure that when we're making these investments and we're wanting to see a return, we're wanting to ensure they're fairly utilised. What part of the system are we using to ensure that we've created a controlled environment without putting too much onus on the driver itself to have that decision-making process and ensure that our vehicles are going to be prioritised from a low emissions perspective. So I'll jump into Poolcar. Most of you should be familiar with this screen. Of course, number of different reports and registers. And for those who've attended our recent UI upgrade and facelift, you'll know that some of this is going to be consolidated and a bit easier to navigate. But the first point that I want to talk to is around pool management. So this can become really critical. When you're introducing an electric vehicle into your fleet, you're wanting to ensure that it's going to be going into a pool where it's going to be well utilized. Those journeys in themselves, you guys know your fleet. You guys know your fleets better than anybody else. You know your drivers better than anybody else. But we want to ensure that we're removing as much barrier from a preferential selection basis for people to be able to select those vehicles. So for those who aren't aware, so I was just in the system administrator menu part here. We jump into pools within pool management. This is a demo site, so try not to look too much into some of the dummy data. But as you will see, you will have all of your different pools. What we can do from here is we can actually set prioritization techniques when we jump into the edit part, and we can put how our available assets are sorted within either the booking calendar, or if we use the alternative method where a driver will select their set parameters for creating a booking, we can actually set what vehicles will be prioritized and assigned to the driver. This can become really important when, okay, today we're talking about reducing emissions and being able to select the lowest emissions vehicle for the purpose of the journey, but we can do this from a utilization perspective. If it's a lease or a replacement score to ensure we're hitting those budgeted or expected replacement schedules, or we can do it from a mileage basis. But when we talk to the environmentally friendly level, we want to be selecting or assigning the lowest emissions vehicle to ensure that they're going to be well utilised and we are going to meet wider organisation targets. So that would be my first tip in terms of taking a control from which vehicles are selected. And by human nature, as we look from a booking calendar perspective, most will work from left to right. I'd imagine some of you may be nodding your head in terms of your driver habits and behaviour. When they have the opportunity to select, there may be some preferential selection on certain vehicle types or however it may be, but we will work from left to right and we will see where the clear gaps are. But the way we can take more control back is by sorting those available assets. From a calendar perspective, it will show our lowest emissions vehicles from left to right. If we do it from the new booking perspective, which would be my next tip, is where an individual or a driver will create booking parameters. They will select what the requirements are, whether that be from a certain time, date. We can customize and configure this if they're needing a certain body type. We can put keyword tags on the vehicles to say a two seat or a 4 seat. Then we can hit search for availability. And what this is going to do, it's going to allocate us a vehicle instead of a vehicle being selected by the driver itself. And as I know here, my Rego PCE VT1 that's one of my electric vehicles. So my parameters are, I require it for this set amount of time. The one way we can take that even further is into our trip planning module, which I know we've spoken about in great detail with a number of you in terms of how that can benefit and really enhance that route optimization, really being able to understand requirements from a charging perspective as well. So being able to charge at destination, and that's something that we can go further into a bit later on. Is there any questions so far? Has anybody utilized this feature from enabling drivers to create bookings via the new booking tab, or are most pretty comfortable with doing it through the booking calendar? I think I know there's some on the call we'd had this discussion with in the past, and if there's any comments, thoughts, please feel free to pop it into the chat as we move through, or shout out as well.
Yeah, Rob, as you just said that, if anyone does want to speak, you can unmute yourself. You've been automatically unmuted, I think, joining in. But yes, if you'd rather just type your question in the chat, please do that, and Rob will answer any questions you've got as we go through.
Thank you so much, Jamie. So an important trigger from here as well is the information that we're actually ingesting into the asset register. So for those who are using the bulk uploaders, for those who are manually inputting this information, there's so many different areas where we can actually gain value from having the right information against vehicles. So the first being the CO2 grams per kilometre. So this is going to calculate our emissions profile. Of course, from an electric vehicle's perspective, this should be zero. But for those that are introducing hybrids, and I know there's some on the call today where that's been the route of choice based on the requirements of the organisation, the demand from the drivers based on the journeys they're undertaking. And hybrids absolutely will be a critical option within here as well, particularly plug-in hybrids as well when managed in the correct way. But it's important that we're understanding from an asset register perspective the information that we're providing, because this is going to be able to give us the correct data back and also help us take some control over that booking process and what's allocated to drivers. So that would be my first part from how we can maximize the use within Pool Car. So the next stage we need to look at is from actually preparing for EV adoption with the right data. So I understand there'll be most of you will be at different stages in the transition process. Some will be at the assessment stage, understanding which vehicles are fit for purpose. Some will be at that, I suppose, education and convincing stage as well, because it can very much weigh on who is in the position at senior level and who is on board with being able to want to progress with this. And it's finding that right balance between appeasing to drivers and employees. There's a H&R aspect to it as well, but also trying to ensure that it's going to be best for the business and ensuring we have the right data. Charlene, I saw you just jumped off. Was there part you wanted to go on to there?
Evans just posted a great question. Can you hide vehicles that have been overused? So if we use this feature, only the first 5 or 7 vehicles can be booked instead of manually turning vehicles on and off.
So within the asset register, Evan, yes, you can have a hide vehicle from booking register. So if you have a significantly overutilized vehicle, as an example, perhaps it may be a case of, instead of running it on emissions profile for vehicles that are allocated, it may be doing it on the lowest utilized. That's one way to proactively manage it, but you can absolutely hide vehicles from the calendar. I suppose that would be, or hide vehicles from the pool. My concern with that would be is that vehicle is then going to significantly drop in its actual how often it's utilized. Does that answer the question, or is there something you wanted me to go into a bit more detail?
We'll just point out that we were on forced mute, so that's just been, Mike's just been enabled now, so we should be able to speak now.
I will say that wasn't myself, so I'm not pacifying all of you by ensuring you can't speak. But Evan, if you want to catch up after, I know we've had a conversation about this in the past, or pop something into the chat and we can go into that in a little bit more detail and just the best way it can be set up for you as well. I think that's just important to remember. It's not a one size fits all approach. There's so many different variables that need to be considered here in terms of organisation, the core business, because 99.9% of the time, the core business of our organisation isn't fleet. It's ensuring we're transporting the driver in the most safe, sustainable way possible transportable from A to B. So it's just really understanding your fleets, your drivers, and what's going to be right for you as well. And Poolcar is a highly customizable and configurable system, so it can give you the real benefits that are going to be for your specific fleets themselves. But just moving on to that, for preparing for the EV adoption with the right data. And this is really interesting when it comes to the reports, the information that we're looking at within the system, and how we can really understand that, interpret it, and actually help us understand what we're trying to achieve here as well. So from I suppose, a high level perspective, one of the first things that we may look into is a utilization side of things. And running a utilization report, so from within Poolcar, and I'll just scroll back there from under reports. Are we looking at individual vehicle utilization? Are we assessing this from not just how often the vehicle was booked in this tab here and the bookings utilization, but how often it was checked out and checked in? There can often be a disparity here as well, from actual booking creation time to the amount of time the vehicle was actually used as well. And it's important that we do this on an individual vehicle basis as well, to understand suitable vehicles that could be replaced that may only require a charge every 4 to 5 days. If we know that our vehicles are only completing 250 kilometers a week, perhaps I think the average range in market now, Charlotte, and correct me if I'm wrong, should be anywhere between 320 to 350 k's range on your standard electric vehicle. So if we can proactively understand that this vehicle may only require 1 to 2 charges per week to ensure it has sufficient demand, that can also then help with understanding charging infrastructure requirements and future procurement in that space, because that can be a real bottleneck, both from a grid capacity perspective, particularly if it's, say, council with a civic centre in a residential location. There can be real barriers around understanding the grid capacity requirements to suffice electric vehicle chargers as well, and being able to overcome that perspective. So it's really being able to hone into the vehicle utilization report. Also looking at, from a pool perspective, not individual vehicles, but understanding our usage and utilization across various pools. So under the reports here, we have pool utilization both by month, by day, and also by hour. We probably won't go into the minute detail of looking by hour, but that can also be a really valuable report to understand peak times of demand during a day, which could help with charging strategy as well. But if we're trying to identify, most have seen success from a successful transition in bringing into particularly underutilized pools or areas or locations, because that can help that soft launch and that soft approach of introducing your first, whether it's a trial electric vehicle, ensuring that it's going to be something that has availability to be used. It could be initially for your short-term journeys, but it's really being able to delve in and understand that information on a pool by pool level, but also by an individual vehicle as well. So we can track over periods of time. We can look over the last 6 months. We can actually break this down and interrogate it as well. So I'd highly suggest that we all have a look into this pool utilization reporting. And as I mentioned, we can do this by day and also by hour as well. So it can be really minute as to the detail we can go into there. And a recently revamped part as well, so from within our report section here at the top, from a system administrator side of things, is we've come a little bit more into the 21st century in terms of the visuals of how these reports look. But also one that I find really interesting is looking at utilization by body type as well. So when having the body type information input into the asset register, we can understand what's the most desired vehicle for our journeys for our drivers. From here, we can see it's our hatch vehicles. So when we're looking into procurement decisions for vehicles that we're sourcing in market, I know I've had a conversation with someone who's on the call here at the moment. They were weighing up from a Nissan Leaf right through to a larger sort of tool for trade plug-in hybrid option. But that's a very disparate requirements from what the fleet may actually need. And it's really important we look at the reporting here to understand what's the utilization by body type as well. Are we sufficing the right vehicles, or are we supplying the right vehicles for the demand from our drivers as well? Because this would lend to me to say this just may be BAU journeys, hatch vehicles will suffice. They're a good option and absolutely within market from a cost effective perspective. Something like your MG4, maybe even one of your BYD Sea Lions, they can be really good options at a low cost point where it's going to help for that transition as well. Charlene, I know from you having conversations in market as well and going to events, is there any other particularly successful vehicles you've seen that have been widely adopted, I suppose not necessarily by industry, but anywhere you've seen they've been a really good option for fleets?
Yeah, so we have quite a few customers who've 100% converted their pool vehicles to EVs. and they've been really happy with them. They're very safe vehicles. They're all basically NCAT 5s. And there was one particular customer who was involved in a big accident, and the vehicle performed, excellently. It completely end-over-ended. That was a Hyundai Ioniq 5, and they just walked away with a little bit of damage from the seatbelt, but no broken anything. So, once staff get over the initial, concerns about vehicles, around EVs, their range anxiety goes down quite quickly, and they enjoy driving the newer vehicles. It depends on what sort of vehicles you've got in your fleet, but mostly our fleet managers are transitioning to vehicles with more touch buttons, so it's not so dissimilar to the vehicles they might drive at home, so there's not such a steep learning curve. That's probably the key thing we notice, but the EVs are certainly performing well, and when you know how your staff use their vehicles, and you match on body type and comfort levels and things like that, we haven't had any pushback on anyone saying the vehicle has been a complete failure or anything like that. So that was really good to understand. But I'm more than happy to, if people want to reach out to me and talk about the types of vehicles they're considering and the data that we can get from those vehicles, and whether that's of use to you. And if you're doing comparisons, more than happy to work with you on any of that sort of area.
Fantastic. Thanks, Charlene. And I encourage anybody to take up that offer. Charlene's obviously speaking with a number of fleets and organisations within various industries, from healthcare, council, through to utilities, critical infrastructure, and has a really deep level understanding of what's going to be fit for purpose in terms of transitioning your fleet as well. So absolutely do reach out, and vice versa, whether that's through your customer success manager or myself, Jamie, Kathy, David, anybody who you've engaged with, please do. We really want to be working with you and to be interrogated in how to get the most out of our system and support outside of that as well from a fleet side of things. And the next report, sorry,
hey Rob,
Jamie.
No, just before we move on, Demetha has just asked a question which might be covering later in chat. But
could you just read the question out, please, Jamie?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, thanks.
Can't see that. She's asked, is there an option in the system to show current real-time range or the battery level of EVs, or this has to be entered manually?
Yes, absolutely. So I will be jumping onto that further down the line, Demetha. So hold the line and patiently wait. It will be with you very shortly. I'm just going to cover off some more of the reporting part. So the next report, as I said, I just wanted to jump onto here, and this is where it can become really critical in ensuring we have all of the information that we can have possible into the asset register as well. And this is from an emissions perspective. And whilst it may not be from real tailpipe emissions if we have no telematics in the vehicle, if we're understanding kilometres driven, if we're understanding the profile of the vehicle, if we're ingesting that fuel data within the system, there is an emissions report here within Poolcar. Maybe lesser known. I'm not sure how many of you are using it, but it can be really valuable in understanding your highest consumed vehicles in terms of that emissions profile. Okay, within here, some of this is just demonstration data, but I would challenge all of you to come into here and actually have a look and really understand what are your highest emitting vehicles. When we're capturing the fuel data and we're building this into Poolcar, so this can be bulk uploaded from your fuel card provider, we can look at that fuel economy in terms of litres per 100 kilometres. We can look at the actual emissions from a tonnage perspective, and we can also understand how is it performing against its expected emissions profile. And I know from reading some green vehicle guide data as well, some vehicles may state you're getting 9 litres to 100 kilometre, or vice versa, 5.5 litres. And actually, it can be quite disparate from what real world testing or real world usage can be like on that vehicle. The Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid from a few years ago is a prime example of that. The green vehicle guide data was significantly skewed from actual real world usage. And in particular, it's understanding which vehicles are going to be suitable within the fleet based on the journeys they're taking. Example I'm going to give is Outlanders were a well adopted vehicle, in particular within commercial fleets as well, because they offered that good mid-size range of a vehicle itself. But in regional locations, it may not be as suitable, the plug-in hybrid version, as the electric battery train may never be engaging because they're getting to 80 to 100 kilometres in quite a short amount of time. And actually, that would be far worse emitting than its ICE predecessor. So it's really understanding and making sure it's fit for purpose from a fleet perspective, but being able to look into current emissions profile. One, from a pool car perspective, and I'll show you in a little bit more detail afterwards some of the work we've done from understanding from a telematics side of things. But this is a report I would really suggest coming into and understanding your highest emitting vehicles with the lowest return on kilometres that could be a prime candidate to replace and be able to confidently introduce some electric vehicles into your fleet. So the next part I just wanted to come on to is around understanding future lease management costs. I know from having conversations with a number of Victorian organisations, see being in Melbourne myself, whilst we cover across Australia and New Zealand, I know there's increased pressure coming from organisations like VicFleet who are wanting to be able to ensure that when vehicles are coming for replacement or there is a lease stop and you're acquiring a new vehicle, they want to be pushing and ensuring that the right electric vehicles or any electric vehicle is bought into the fleet. And with this increased pressure comes increased demand, and also could be a disparity in cost as well. I know from a previous conversation, I think it was with one of our customers in regional Victoria, they were saying that a Toyota Camry hybrid was $500 to $600 per month. In comparison, the MG4 was $1,100 a month. And whilst your hand may be forced to take the electric vehicle, of course, there's a cost factor that we need to consider as well. So this is where it can really come handy in ensuring that you've got your replacement schedule or your leasing information within the asset register in Pool Car. So I'll just show you where we come to here. And if we come into the edit part, in acquisition and disposal, we can capture our lease information. We can put whether it's a replacement schedule if they're owned vehicles, either by Odo or whether it's time bound. And this will populate a couple of reports within Pool Car, which I'm biased, but this is probably my favorite one, is our lease snapshot report. This is a decision supporting tool, which can really help you understand future decisions when it comes to lease management. It will also work and estimate the kilometres based on what you've budgeted versus actual usage and the estimated kilometres at the end of term. So if you're looking to be able to go, we actually estimate and we typically budget based on vehicle 1,250 or 1,250 kilometres per month. But in real-time usage over the last 2 years, we've actually been running at 700 to 800 kilometres per month. There can be an opportunity to cut cost here and actually be able to work to an efficient way. And what we can do within the lease snapshot report, it's going to show us a calculation based on the commencement date. This is just of a year's lease, 50,000 kilometres or 24 months. It's taking the current Odo, which we'll receive from various different ways, and however you have that set up via the check-in via the app, whether that's through key management, integrated telematics. But it's actually going to tell us our actual kilometres per month versus our budgeted, and what those kilometres are going to be at the end of that term. And the score, we want them to be, I suppose, as close to the 100% as possible, because that shows that we've done proactive management as well. And where this links into electric vehicles is if we're able to procure more vehicles that are electric, whilst there might be a slightly higher lease cost, and I'm not saying that's a blanket statement and it will be the same every single time, but it's going to really help us to have the confidence that we're not going to be having increased costs to be able to bring vehicles into the fleet. And also from a fringe benefit tax perspective, of course, we know that there's an exemption there as well. So there's cost analysis that needs to be done when looking into these decisions as well, if you've not already introduced them into your fleet. Is there any questions on any of the reporting, anything that I can go into a bit further detail on before I move on to the next part? Or any questions in the chat, Jamie?
Questions in the chat at the moment?
Cool. No worries
Please
at all.
unmute yourself if you've got anything.
Absolutely fine. So the next part I just want to come onto here is around the benefits of integrated telematics. So for those who aren't aware, Smartrak also offer a telematics offering and site. They're our own devices. They integrate natively with our Pool Car vehicle management and booking system. And there's some real increased efficiencies and proactive tools that are within there that can really help you in confidently managing those EVs, ensuring that vehicles are fit for purpose, ensuring that vehicles are charged based on upcoming needs, not just returning to site and plugging a vehicle in, which I know can be a constraint and maybe make us think that we require one charger to one vehicle at a particular site, or how we can actually manage that charging strategy to ensure efficiency and also reduce costs as well in terms of capital outlay when we're putting that into place. So I'm just going to go over a few bits in terms of, Demetha, this part's important from that visibility of critical EV data within booking calendar or booking process as well. So live range, live state of charge, also how we manage those charging schedules, the emissions insights within there as well, and also some more deep level utilization insights that come from telematics data as well. So as a starting point, as we can see here, for those who aren't familiar, this is Smartrak system where our telematics information lives. Within the near future, we will be implementing something where it will be one password, one login, and everything will sit behind the same system itself, which is really exciting. So it's less, I think, sort of app fatigue and having to remember various usernames and passwords. I am pretty bad for that, so I always have to reset my password. But one thing that we can see here, so this is one of our vehicles, and in real time, we are able to obtain the state of charge, the range on the battery, and that charging status. This is fantastic because it's the raw data, but it's what we actually do with that data from an improvement perspective that can really help ensure that your drivers are confident that they're going to have the right vehicles for their upcoming journeys, ensure that they're not going to get to the car and there's going to be a last minute scramble when it comes to there's no range within the vehicle itself, and we can put certain things in place to have that proactive management as well. And apologies, my computer is now deciding to go very slow. Let's see if I can come in from a different part here. Fantastic. Here we go. So from a calendar side of things, we can see the current range. So this is integrated directly from the vehicle into our booking calendar. What we can also do is when we run to the system settings as well. So if we come into the main menu with an application settings, there's a part here called sustainability. So this can be really important when it comes to alerting, prioritizing, showing that information, but also putting barriers in place. If you're wanting to ensure that whenever an EV is used, we can confirm it's charging before it's checked back in. That is a prompt we can put into place. But I would use with caution on that part, because I think it will be counterintuitive to something else that I'm about to show you where we can extract information as well. But we can also have the confidence to say if the range is less than X amount, we can also put a time threshold in place to notify not just the system admin, but the upcoming booking holder about a low range within a vehicle as well. And they can then assess whether that's going to be suitable. From a proactive management perspective with charging schedules, we've implemented a new feature called priority charging, which is really exciting. So from a system administrator side of things, you will be notified in advance if a vehicle is to have insufficient range for an upcoming journey. So most of you will not be able to see this part within your system at the moment. It's on a individual switch on basis, dependent on having integrated telematics into the system. But when we use our trip planning module, we're able to understand the required range for that upcoming journey. We can see the available range on the vehicle currently, whether it's plugged in and charging, and if there's going to be sufficient charge by the time that journey starts. So we're proactively notifying to say there should be no last minute scramble. There should be no incidents or occurrences where somebody gets to the car, they're rushing out the door. Let's think of it from a health perspective. It's a district nurse going to an urgent appointment. The last thing they want is friction to be able to complete their duties. It should be no different from an ICE vehicle leaving site and having sufficient petrol within the tank. It's exactly the same, in ensuring that our vehicles or our electric vehicles work just like any other vehicle within our fleet. So one thing we can do from here as well is we can select action, because we can see here this vehicle only has 100 kilometers of range. Its upcoming journey requires 122. That's ringing alarm bells to me. So what I can do, it's going to suggest to me other available vehicles that are similar by make, model, shape, size, and I can just proactively reallocate that vehicle. Of course, it's going to suggest to me electric vehicles first, because we want it to be like for like, and we know that's going to be sufficient for that upcoming journey. And we can run through, we can hit confirm, and I have to put a reallocation reason, and this could be insufficient range. And they will get a notification to say that's been successfully reallocated as well. So it's being able to take that EV data that we see from within here, which is raw data. It's fantastic. We can extract it, but it's what we actually then do with that, where you shouldn't just be having to come in every time and fantastic, I can see it's at 79%. Well, what does that mean to me as the fleet manager? Where's that going to give me the time back and help me proactively manage these vehicles within the fleet as well? Is there any questions on that part? I know there's some within here that have used and are using this feature. Anything that anybody wanted to post in the chat, thoughts, comments? We're really keen to hear feedback and how that could work for you and your fleets. I'm conscious of time as well, so I'll keep moving through so we've got some time for a more open forum at the end. But the next...
Hey, Rob, just got one from Deborah. She said, hi, do we have to request this feature?
In terms of... It requires there to be integration with our telematics. So we're natively getting that information from the vehicle itself. And then it will be a case of enabling it within Poolcar. So, sorry, Deborah, I don't know which organisation you're from. I can't see the list there. But whoever your customer success manager or whoever you've engaged with within Smartrak will absolutely be able to take this through with you in a bit more detail. So we'll be in touch shortly afterwards. Cool. So I just want to go into some of the other parts now within reporting within the Smartrak system where we can really understand the usage of vehicles and spot other opportunities for, I suppose, reduction in emissions, how we can manage these vehicles, understand charging strategies as well. So the first report I want to jump onto is when we look into our activity report. So one of the key parts we can get from the vehicle is when the charge is connected and when the charge is disconnected. And this is where I suppose it's counterintuitive to what I mentioned within Poolcar settings in saying how we need to ensure the vehicle's returned, put on charge straight away, because that may not always be the case. This could actually lead to increased costs on vehicles charging when maybe not required. It's not charging vehicles based on actual requirements for journeys. It's just a reactive stage to make sure and takes away that, I suppose, range anxiety of thinking, I'm just going to put it on charge just in case. Because whilst it may be cheaper to do that in the short term, rather than we look at our ICE equivalent and filling the vehicle up with petrol, in the long run, those costs are going to mount as well. And it can become really difficult to manage the more and more electric vehicles you introduce into your fleet. So if we run this report from here, as Blue Pit says, here's one I made earlier. But we can see on an individual vehicle basis over the time when the charge is connected, when it's disconnected. We can't see the status of the charge here, but we can see the time bound. But what I can do is I can run in and I can look within the map here and I can see when that vehicle was put onto charge, it had returned from a trip and that vehicle was put on charge at 50%. Where that can become difficult is I can see straight after that vehicle did not complete another journey and the charger was disconnected in the evening, which can be really counterintuitive because we've then maybe taken up space for another electric vehicle within the fleet that maybe had insufficient charge that required it for an upcoming journey. And this is where the efficiency improvement can come from when you're looking at that charging strategy and making sure that vehicles are charged based on requirements, not based on concerns, and being able to harbour that range anxiety from your drivers as well. But if we look outside of it, and I'll just come back to the agenda here as well, reducing emissions through driver habits as well. And apologies, I'm skirting through because I'm conscious of time. But it's important to remember that electric vehicles are absolutely a critical part of this process, but they are a means to an end of the wider goal. And this is around emissions reduction. That is the wider goal we're trying to achieve. And there's many different ways this can be done as well. So one important part is to look into idling locations, how the duration of idling, is this something that we're managing and proactively stopping with drivers? Is it intentional or is it something they're not aware of? Because reduced fuel costs, reduced fuel burns is going to lead to reduced emissions as well. So here's an example of a report I pulled earlier. Please don't judge. This is actually on my vehicle from a telematics device I have within here. And this is year to date and they're short periods of time. But actually, we can calculate and see that with this particular vehicle, there was 3 hours idling time over a 6-month period. If we actually looked at those individual occurrences and wanted to understand how can we reduce that? How can we reduce that when we're across 100, 150, 200 vehicles within our fleet? We can see significant reductions within our emissions as well. And there is a more detailed emissions report within the Smartrak site here. When we come into sustainability and we look at the emissions profile, and we can spot trends over time. We can look at the total distance, the average emissions profile for those total vehicles, and also look at it from a weighted perspective as well. And this can be really important when you're introducing lower emissions vehicles into the fleet, understanding the impact that can have. And when it comes to your monthly, quarterly, annual reporting, you're sending this back to your exec, your director, your C-suite. they're going to be really impressed that this can be exported straight away and it's going to be accurate data based on your vehicle usage. It's a real good news story to share as well. So I would really, really suggest looking into this if you have capability at the moment within the Smartrak system. It's really easy to set up and we're more than happy to help you. It's just a case of ensuring the correct emissions profile is against your vehicles and you can spot those trends over time as well. I think I've run to 4 minutes left, Jamie. So I feel I've done okay there. Is there any questions within the chat? Anything anybody wanted to share? I'll stop sharing now, or wanted me to go over in a bit more detail. Just come to the chat.
Nothing sitting in the chat at the moment.
Okay.
But yes, I think important to say if we will be at the end of this webinar sending an email out to everybody. So with our webinar recording and the slide deck, if anyone has any questions or they've seen things that Rob's shown that they want to know more about, there will be a form to let us know if you want us to reach out. So yeah, we can help you there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, everybody, today. I hope you found it useful. There were some tips or some things you've picked up that you maybe didn't know before within the system. As always, we're really keen to keep the conversation flowing. I know you will have quarterly, monthly catch-ups with your relevant Smartrak contact. So it would be great, to keep this conversation going and understand how we can make sure you're getting the most out of your system. It's not just a set and forget. There's certain elements where you may not be using the system. It can really give you that time back and that return on investment as well. So fantastic. We'll send some stuff through. And as always, any questions, reach out. Thank you, everybody.
Madison.